Hey everybody, welcome to another action-packed, exciting episode of Scotty's Record Shop. Gonna do an album review, a new release. Now that I'm back to work, I can actually afford to buy things as they're coming out. And I couldn't pass this one up. One of my favorite albums from one of my favorite bands of all time. My history with this album and with this band goes back to the mid 70s. Not quite when this album came out, but actually the album that came after this. In 1974, that's when my brother and I caught on to these guys. Who am I talking about? I'm talking about Aerosmith. The legendary edition. This is a three CD, box set, and we're going to get into what this has, and maybe what it doesn't, or what it should possibly have. We'll talk about sound quality. We'll talk about all that stuff. But first thing I want to do is do a little bit of a history on this album, and not a very long one, but a little bit of a history of the album and of the band. Because I've noticed with a couple of YouTubers, I'm not going to say names. I'm not going to, because these are actually channels that I really truly enjoy, and I know that maybe you're not as into this album as I am. The record company sent it to you. By the way, I bought this myself. Thank you very much. We're going to talk about how much this costs too, which we'll get into that. But maybe you didn't fully understand, the history of the band or whatever. So we're gonna get into that. And again, like I said, I'm not gonna name people or anything like that. I just want to make some stuff clear. So first thing I want to make known, Aerosmith is not from Boston. They're not. They were actually formed in New Hampshire in 1970, right around 1970. Steven Tyler was kind of the only outsider, but he was up in New Hampshire from New York, because he's a New Yorker. I'm talking like I'm from New York. He was a New Yorker, and he was up there, and they got together and started playing Yardbirds and stuff like that. They were a blues band initially. Got signed to, now this is where I'm going to correct somebody. Got signed to Columbia Records. Now, one person on YouTube showed the CD here. I'm going to pop this out. Come on, get out of here. Doesn't matter which one it is, but said, this is the original Capitol label that the album was on. It was not on although I will be honest with you, the color scheme looks like the Columbia record label here in America. If you were in the UK, I believe you got that on CBS. So anyway, so it was on Columbia Records. The first album. Now we're going to talk about covers here for a little bit, which some people got a little confused about this. I got the impression that one reviewer, thought that this was kind of a new, kind of improved cover because, I've got the CD here, an older. That just doesn't look as good as, and he said that doesn't look as good as this. I don't know. Whatever. But let me tell you something. The original cover. This was the original cover from 1973. Now, another interesting side note about this album, and I don't have it. I thought I did, but if you can find one, the very, 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 very first pressings, the last song, "Walking the Dog," is actually misspelled. It's misspelled. It says "Walking the Dig." I worked at a radio station years ago that had a copy. That was the only copy I've ever seen. I don't know how super rare it is, but I know it's rarer than this. But this is an original, or fairly close to an original. It came out before 1976. Now here's where the album covers. This is where this one comes into play. 1976, Aerosmith were finally starting to get really popular nationwide. They were bad. They were nationwide, as ZZ Top would say. They reissued the album. Now, does this look familiar? Right? Now you can tell because yes, it's a closer shot. It's neater looking, but also the song Dream On was finally becoming a hit. It was released in 1973 and it made it into the Hot 100, but it didn't do that well. And it was if you can find the original 45, it's a horrible, I don't want to say it's a horrible edit. It's a very interesting edit with some different instrumentation. It has like a choiry sound over it, which is really different. But you can tell because they were pushing the song. It says featuring Dream On. Isn't that nice? Same thing here, featuring Dream On. So this is actually the 1976 cover of this album. Okay. Do I want to say anything else about this? I'll mention, because one of the things on here on disc 3 is Paul's Mall. And we're going to talk a little bit about Paul's Mall too. This is, what this basically features is a remaster. You can see this here, probably. A remaster of right there, of the album, 2024. Then a remix of the album from 2024. And then rarities, which, if you're a longtime Aerosmith fan, you knew about a fair amount of these. We'll get into that in a minute. Let's first talk about the remaster of this. I compared this to, I think this is, I'll show you the disc. I think that this is it's either a 94 or a 2000 and an early 2000 mix. This is a loud, really in-your-face mix. It sounds good. Maybe not that much, maybe a little squished because of the whole loudness wars and the day, but it made this album really punch you in the face. Compared this to the remastered. I think the remastered on this sounds a little better. It's still really loud, really in your face, really punchy, maybe even a little more punchy than this. Kind of an updated sound. Of course, we are catering to a certain extent to the earbud generation. And I'll be honest with you, I listened to this. Actually, I didn't get this until yesterday, which is the day after it was released. Because Amazon promised me that it would get here on day of release, and it almost made it, right? This is Amazon. But I did listen to it on Amazon Music on my way into work on Friday, on the 20th, on its release date. And so I kind of gauged how this would sound on earbuds. And then when I got this, obviously yesterday, I cranked it up and I listened to it on the hi-fi downstairs, which isn't. I don't have a Macintosh, horribly expensive setup, but I never really talk about my setup. I've got actually a couple of setups downstairs, but it's probably about a $3,000 setup, around that, $3,500 worth of equipment on one setup. I mean, it's not a bad setup. So I thought the remaster sounded very punchy, sounded good. I think it did sound just a little bit better than this. Okay, let's get to the remix. Now this got some people's goats a little bit, and I get it. There's good things about it, and there are some not so good things about it, in my opinion. And it's funny because I watched. I'll mention this guy because I love his channel. Brendan Schneider. You probably never see this, but hi, Brendan. Great guy down in New York. If you don't know about his channel, and if you're a part of the vinyl community or the YouTube music community, you know about Brendan. But if you don't, search him out. He makes videos almost every freaking day. I don't know how he does that with his real job and everything else, but great guy, very informative. Did a wonderful review of this that actually got released earlier today. I watched it, and it was just really good. Anyway, he gave a critique of the remix, and I agree with him on some of it, and some of it I'm like, okay, he found that because one thing on the remix is that there's a little bit of studio chatter in front of a couple of these songs, 3, 4 songs. And he found that kind of distracting and annoying. And I do get that. I find it, and maybe he does too, and maybe you will too. I find it fascinating because you never really get to hear that stuff, but it does kind of just interrupt that flow of how things go. And there's one example, which is a negative for me where this happens. And Brendan didn't mention this, but I bet he feels the same way, and I bet a lot of you will feel the same way too. The last two tracks, Moving Out and Walking the Dog, when on the original album and even on the remastered, I didn't mess with it. But on the remixed, there's a gap, a real gap, and even just a second or so of studio stuff at the beginning of Walking the Dog. Now, on the original album, it goes right directly from Moving Out into Walking the Dog, and it's like before you get a chance to catch your breath, that punch of Walking the Dog comes in. In live performances, same thing. Same thing. As a matter of fact, on the Paul's Mall broadcast that's on here, same thing, Walking the Dog. And as a matter of fact, I have a bootleg of outtakes from this, where even in the studio they ripped into it. That's where they did it. That's originally how they did it. I don't know if that's the way they ended up doing it. It didn't sound like it when they were doing the remix. It sounded like they did separate it. Maybe it was just in rehearsals where they kind of went from one to another, and it just added something to that, which I really dug. It was kind of an immediacy to it. There are little pieces like harmonica stuff from Tyler, and some kind of scat talking that he's doing over the intro of one of the songs, which isn't normally there on this, and I found it fascinating. I didn't find it annoying at all, but it was interesting. The mix on this, I think, the remix, I think, is more open. I guess Steven Tyler. I didn't read the inner liner. There is a nice little booklet in here, by the way. Not quite as good as the booklet that comes with. I'm not going to show you everything, but there's some. Not quite as good as the booklet that comes with or the book that comes with the vinyl edition of this, but the vinyl edition is a little more expensive. Anyway, where was I going with this? The mix. Steven Tyler and Joe Perry were the ones that did the remix, I guess, and it does sound more open. I mean, just overall, I think that there's more definition. In many cases, you can hear the instruments a little better. I think the guitars are a little more punchy. Sometimes maybe almost too punchy at times. Maybe a little bit with a couple of solos. It was like, okay, we could have backed off on that a little bit. Steven Tyler's voice is nice and clear. As a matter of fact, there are some places where, some inflections and stuff that you don't really get off the original album that you'll hear on the remix. I think overall it's a very interesting listen. Does it replace the original mix? Although I find it interesting and I will listen to it from time to time, I don't think it will replace it for me, because I'm such a creature of habit, and I am kind of a what's the word I'm looking for here? A purist. The way that they originally made this album, the way that they mixed it, is the way it's supposed to be, sort of. Although it's interesting. This remix is very interesting. I'm going with it because also with the first original mix, I think that it sounds tighter. Maybe not as clear and crisp, and it definitely, a lot of people talk about how it kind of sounds flatter. kind of does, but I like the tightness of it. It really, it just adds something to the ballsiness of it. Even though it's not as punchy, it's tighter sounding. Um, there are really good things about the remix, and there are some really good things about the original mix. So, that, you say tomato, I say tomato. You may end up really digging the remix. I know one YouTuber who did a review of this last week because he was lucky enough to have a record company send it to him. Um, he liked the remix better. Good for him. Good for him. Great. Really happy for him. And I can see why. You may like it. So there's that. Those are the first two. Now we get into the third disc. The third disc. By the way, this is how the layout looks in case you want to really know. But anyway, the third disc, which is Rarities, which if you're an Aerosmith fan, a long-term, big-time Aerosmith fan, Live at Paul's Mall is not new to you. I hope it's not. I actually was looking around. I've got digital copies of it and everything else. This thing has been bootlegged forever. And I have a vinyl copy, but it's in a box somewhere. I looked downstairs in the Aerosmith section. I thought for sure that I'd put it there, but it's in a box somewhere. And it sounds good. It was good. How does it sound on here? I'll be honest with you. I think it sounds better. I think that there's a real chance that they got the original two tracks. A little history on this Paul's Mall thing. First of all, Paul's Mall was a club in Boston. They were around in the 60s and the 70s. And they were kind of sort of, I think they started out as more of a jazz club. But they really got diversified. They have a lot of different people that played there. Now, this broadcast, because this is a radio broadcast, was broadcast over WBCN. 104.1 WBCN in Boston. Loved that station growing up. Loved. Whenever I got a chance to go down to Boston to visit the grandparents, I was on it. I was on it. I love listening to BCN. And they would do a lot of broadcasts. Now, some of the other broadcasts, if you want to look for bootlegs, I don't know if these things are available or not. I know they're on YouTube, though. You've got things like Bob Marley and the Wailers, live at Paul's Mall, broadcasted on WBCN around 1975-ish or so. Miles Davis at Paul's Mall, broadcasted on WBCN. And it's on YouTube. Great shows. A lot of other people played there. I think Muddy Waters did some gigs there that were broadcast. An odd one from Paul's Mall that I don't think got broadcast on on BCN, but it was 1974. Barry Manilow. I don't mind Barry Manilow. I'm just telling you, I don't mind Barry Manilow, and he had a really hot band, and it was really kind of a jazzy, big bandy kind of feel that he had. So he could fit in there. He sold out the club, in '74. So anyway, Aerosmith did this show on March 20th. Oddly enough, March 20th, when this was released, but 53 years earlier. 1973, right about the same time this album got released, as a matter of fact. They did a couple of shows. BCN broadcasted one that I'm aware of. It's the only one that exists. And I think they did a really good job overall. People are like, well, this doesn't... Steven Tyler's vocals are a little too up front and stuff. Got to remember, this was just a live mix off a board to a 2-track reel-to-reel that was back at the station. So... what was being recorded was what was happening. So, Steven Tyler could be screaming to the audience or moving his mic, and his vocals would come in and out a little bit, and there may be a little bit of feedback every once in a while. I know there's some sax work on here that is kind of in and out, kind of at times, depending on where the saxophone player was compared to the mic. This shit happens. in live shows, and this is what it was, live show. But I'll tell you, they were hot. They kicked ass. Love, love, love this this recording. It's about an hour long. Now, some people are saying that, oh, first time released. I am pretty sure that I'm prepared, aren't I? Yes, I'm prepared. I believe two of the songs from the Paul's Mall show made it to this. I Ain't Got You and Mother Popcorn. Almost certain that they were club dates, and this is the only club date from that era, and it sounds the same to me. So actually, two of these songs from the Paul's Mall recordings were released on this. Great album, by the way. If you've never had a chance to listen to Live Bootleg from 1978, the first Aerosmith album that I ever bought myself. It didn't depend on my brother to get it or anything like that. I got this puppy. Still have the original one with the poster downstairs in vinyl form. So anyway, I think that's great. I overlooked the imperfections. I think that overall the sound quality is better than pretty much all of the boots, so we don't need the bootlegs anymore. Thank you very much. Now let's get into the three songs that are on here. A couple of different versions of Making It, a rehearsal and a run through. The arrangement is different. Not drastically different, but there's definitely different parts. Things that they would work in. Thankfully, they'd work in before the master recording was taken care of. I find that the rehearsal is better than the actual take that they put on here. A couple of other, we got a blues jam on here, which honestly, in my opinion, is useless. Doesn't add to anything. It's just bass and harmonica going on for about a couple minutes, and it's like we don't need this. Last track on here, though, is an interesting instrumental, and I don't think it sounds like anything Aerosmith really ever did. All five members are playing on this. You got Steven Tyler doing some harp stuff on here, so he's included. But the interesting thing about it is that there's a recurring part of the song that would be taken by the band and used in Sweet Emotion, that ascending line, that ascending line was actually first introduced in this last song on this disc. And I find those things very interesting. And with the bootleg that I have of outtakes from this, that wasn't on there. So it was the first time I had ever heard that. So, what do I think of this disc? The third disc. Third disc I think is good. I'm happy that we have a cleaner version of Paul's Mall. I'll be honest with you, knowing what is out there, and it's basically just outtakes, of them working through songs. I think they could have put more on here. I don't know if they could have fit another disc. Maybe that would not have worked well. But you could have put stuff on the end of either one of the first two discs. Just saying. Because there's more stuff out there. And they're interesting versions of these songs that are studio grade. They were done. Unfortunately, the bootlegs aren't quite as good as they should be because they were taken off of cassette and stuff. And so I think they could have added more to this, honestly. This is just a personal gripe. Okay, so let's talk about how much this costs. Okay, if you are in the UK, and I know some of you are in the UK, you're talking about £35, £40. If you're here in America, between $50 and $60 for the CD. For the album, the 4-album, and this is not the Super Deluxe. Super Deluxe, you get a coat. I don't know if Steven Tyler comes over and puts the coat on you and gives you a big kiss. Ugh. I don't know. But the deluxe vinyl edition is like $150 for 4 albums. I think this is overpriced. I think it's good, but I think it is overpriced. But if you are a big Aerosmith fan, and don't go without eating or anything silly like that to get this, thinking that you have to, you know, you know, must have mofo, right? Was that what it is, right? Fear of missing out. This is going to be around for a while. Save up your pennies. Maybe the price will go down a little bit. I don't know. I hope it does for your sake. Um, I'm still glad that I got this. Big Aerosmith fan. I'm hoping that this is the first of many of these, especially the first four albums. Those are just, if you watched my Aerosmith ranking from a couple weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, you know that the first four albums for me are just the cream of the crop. So anyway, that's my review of this little puppy right here. Let me know what you think. Did you get this? Are you planning on getting this? If you've got it, what do you think? What do you think it's worth? $55 or whatever it was you paid for it. I hope you got it cheaper. Not a 5-finger discount. Don't do 5-finger discounts, kiddies. Don't steal it. But hopefully you can get it a little cheaper. Hopefully you enjoy it. Let me know what you think. And while you're at it, like and subscribe and tell your friends, even tell your enemies about Scotty's Record Shop, right? Just let everybody know that Scotty's back in town and making videos, okay? Alrighty. Until next time, everybody. Peace and love.